Okay, welcome to another edition of Real Estate Investor Talk, and I'm here with Ipeleng Mkhari. Ipeleng Mkhari was our master investor recently, but Ipeleng is the CEO of Motsing Investment Holdings. She is also serves on a number of boards, property boards, companies, unlisted, listed companies, and in addition to that, she's also the chairman of the South African Property Owners Association.
Yeah.
So tell us, where did your property business journey start? Because where did Motsing start?
So very interesting. So we started off not as property players, but we started
Right.
off as service providers to the property industry.
Okay.
1998, I worked for an organization, a family-owned business that was essentially promoting and selling and installing CCTV solutions. I then decided to leave that company, and I asked them if I can leave with the particular business that we had started, and it was essentially a joint venture, BEE partnership.
Right.
And so in 98, I started this journey of looking for clients who were primarily either landlords or managing agents, property managers, or facilities managers. And essentially we started interacting with that kind of clientele. It took about 4 years, and we did our first transaction in the property industry. And that was in 2002,
Right.
when Marriott Property Services approached us to say, well, one of their key clients is wanting them to address the transformation gap.
Right.
And we're looking for Marriott to find a black empowerment partner to essentially transfer skills. And that's exactly what we did.
Right.
And so in 2002, we joint ventured or created a new company, a new SPV with Marriott called Motsing Marriott Property Services. And that's really when the property bug bit me.
Right.
And it has never left me ever since.
Right.
It's been absolutely fantastic. You know, we've since grown from being a focused joint venture entity with Marriott, managing 2 large super regionals, to, you know, we've morphed into an organization that has established a facilities management business. We've delved into public-private partnerships, which involve a myriad, particularly in the accommodation space, which involve development, funding, management of these assets, essentially build, operate, and transfer kind of model. And we've also delved into acquisition of assets.
So how did this thing start picking up?
Kind of picking up. You
Yes.
know, I think the first decade of Motsing's existence, really we moved from CCTV all the way to this value chain of services around a property. But what was missing
Yes.
was the ownership of the asset.
Right.
And when we started to taste that particular opportunity was really when we got into the triple P world, because public-private partnerships by their very nature require private sector to raise funding to acquire or develop an asset. Doesn't matter what asset it is. The Gautrain is a PPP.
Yes.
Ours was not the Gautrain, it was a property.
Right.
We developed for DIRCO in a consortium for the Department of International Relations. We developed their head office. So we took them from 18 separate buildings in
Right.
Pretoria, Tshwane, into one large facility of 100,000 square meters under roof with a conference center and everything else. And that was built in the consortium that we were shareholders in. It was also managed, and we continue to be very actively involved as a managing agent or a facilities manager in that contract. And it has a 25-year contract.
Right.
That's when I think the Motsing shareholders at the time realized that we needed to transition from that first decade of services into a decade where we start actually acquiring the asset.
Absolutely.
Or developing the asset.
Right. So that was deal one in terms of acquisition.
Correct.
How many deals have you done since?
We've done quite a number since. Quite
Right.
a number. We've been very lucky. We've been very blessed in that
And it's
sense.
always commercial space.
Always commercial, so we don't participate at all in the residential space.
Okay.
And when we say commercial, it's retail, it's industrial, and it's office.
Right.
And more so today, what we're seeing is an interesting move also to alternative assets. You know, but let me focus on the deal flow that we looked at. So we came up with a strategy in about 2009 that said Vision 2010 for Motsing was to now really go very strongly into the acquisition of assets. And it was very specific that we wanted to acquire assets and not develop assets. We couldn't develop because we didn't have money.
Right.
And so that wasn't even an option.
Yeah.
But we could acquire, and we could acquire based on the very good policies that the DPW, Department of Public Works, had at the time.
Right.
So DPW came up with a policy that said, our BE policy, we are the custodian of all government departments and not state-owned entities, but government departments. We are the custodian of the properties. We must make sure that government departments are housed somewhere and that the assets are managed and well managed. See, and policy really said this. It said, if you have got a lease with the Department of Public Works,
Right.
and you happen to be 30% black owned or 51% black owned or 100% black owned, we have a stratified strategy that says if you're 30%, you'll get a lease of so many years, but if you're 100% black owned and you want to get into this industry, we will then, give you a lease of 9 years and 11 months.
Right.
That's a 10-year lease. A 10-year lease.
Great lease, yeah.
That's fantastic. So we've built and amassed the capacity to manage a property. And we then begin to put a value proposition around the story around Motseng being able to acquire assets. And we start knocking on doors, literally, as we've always done as entrepreneurs. And we obviously come across a number of sellers, large listed funds, who were wanting to offload specific assets that had government tenants.
Right.
And why would they want to offload them? Because they're not going to get the 9-year, 11-month lease that they previously could get based on this new policy. And essentially, we were quite lucky. I mean, it took a while. It took about a year or two to conclude these transactions. But from zero basis, we were able to acquire assets of about 900 million off our very small balance sheet. And at that point, talking about 2011, we decided that we either needed to get a big brother in Motseng or we needed to list and go to the capital markets. And we went to the capital markets. So we listed a property fund in 2012. Listing value was about 2 billion, and we continued to manage those assets as Motseng.
So what is your message to your budding investors out there? Because there's a lot of budding starting investors. They're looking at you and they say, look at Ipeleng, look what she's achieved. It's fantastic.
I would first of all say to
What's
them
your
that,
advice?
Thank you. I'd say to them that this is my 20th year and we're not even anywhere close to the things that we want to achieve.
Right.
Be patient.
Yes. Okay.
Be patient with yourself. Investing in anything requires absolute dedication. It requires sacrifice.
Right.
It requires you to lose a lot before
Yes.
you gain a lot.
Yes.
I think that there is a view out there that says, oh my goodness, from a property investor, I've got to actually own a physical asset. I've got to own this big building.
Yes.
And it's hard to get to that point, right? Because you've got to build an investment case, you've got to build capital. It takes time.
Yes.
And I think that it's very possible for investors who've got a little bit to start playing in this space. I think the last thing I will say, the property sector is quite regulated, okay? Whether you're a residential broker or player or developer or you're a commercial player. Know the regulatory environment, understand it, read. There is a lot of information. Understand how municipalities work and how you have to essentially, there's a direct relationship between property and units and so forth. Read. Essentially, I'm saying inform yourself. It's not difficult.
Well, I mean, Ipeleng, you've already made a massive impact on the industry, but what is it that you'd like to look back and say, all these things that I've done, now I'm on Sapo, influential, so...
I think that it's a great question, by the way. It's hard sometimes to look forward and, but I think one of the greatest things that I would like to at least have imparted or have influenced is the exposure to this industry, particularly for a lot of people who are on the periphery.
Right.
Who today, a young person who's 15 today, sitting in a classroom, writing their grade 10 exams, I'd like them to know that you have a potential career in the commercial property space in this country. Whether you want to study to be a CA, or you would like to become a broker, or you would like to become a QS, or you may want to be an entrepreneur starting your own business.
Yeah.
I want that person sitting in that classroom to know that this space is actually an exceptionally active, transforming, exciting space where young South Africans can grow, build businesses, be part of a greater community, and contribute to their economy. I think that also the second comment I'll make is that education has been a critical element for me in being able to be in institutions and organizations like not just Sapawa, but Women's Property Network.
Mm-hmm.
I chaired that in 2007. And when I joined, I remember the one thing that I wanted to do was to say, well, let's start a bursary fund and let's start a mentorship program, because it's all good and well getting together as women and clicking glasses and having champagne and talking to one another, but we need to take it further.
Mm-hmm.
We need to bring young people into this space
Sure.
who really want to now start to understand how do I talk to some of the large listed fund CEOs, how do I access those people? It's really, really important. We have, today in South Africa, we have a high unemployment crisis. I hope the day that I'm not in this industry anymore, we would have been able to create such a burning desire and a knowledge of this industry that we start to see the uptick of a diverse group of young people coming in saying, we want to create the future businesses and the future funds, and we want to be those people. That to me, I would be a happy person if I knew that was the little legacy that I could leave.
That's wonderful. I think you've left on such an inspirational note, Ipeleng, and it was absolutely wonderful chatting to you.
Well, thank you.
And good luck for your future, and also keep up a great job with Sapawa.
Well, thank you, and likewise to yourself.
And thank you very much for the opportunity. Wonderful job. Thank you.